Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video, and today we are going to do a character guide on Seymour. So Seymour just dropped with his LD. He can be quite powerful in the right situation. He'll definitely get better when he gets his burst. So his burst isn't coming yet, but it is coming later. So you kind of need to decide, do you want the LD now and then get the burst later on like a different banner? Do you want to pull for the LD banner later and try to get the burst at the same time? That's totally up to you. But if you really like Seymour and you're a fan of him, he definitely can be usable and very good, right? So in this video, we're going to look at the artifacts, the passive, and then we'll jump into a quick little showcase on them, right? So Seymour is primarily a magic damage dealing character, so you do want to focus on attack with this guy. So on the artifacts, my artifacts, by the way, you can see I even have white artifacts. It's been so long since I've even done artifacts for this guy. It was before Mogpass came out, and this is my first time ever building Seymour. I never built him in any of his other iterations, so I still have to farm artifacts for him, but this is the closest. You want to do attack 108, max brave 330, pretty standard for a damage dealing character, right? So that's what you want to do there. And then on the artifacts, sorry, the spheres, I should say. Let's go to the sphere. So he's got an A slot and 2 E slots. So on the A slot, because he's primarily a damage dealer, you want to go attack, brave damage, or magic attack because he fits all those. The thing with Seymour is he does weakness damage against enemies that are debuffed, so you can actually dip into weakness damage spheres as well. So if there's a weakness damage requirement or any other sphere that he can fulfill, they'll do attack, brave damage, or magic attack. That's what you want to go with. Characters that have weakness damage, to me, like Rydia's is one of the best because you're hitting brave damage and attack in one sphere. So that's what I would go with. So I did put a refined Rydia on. I refined a lot of Rydias because she's very good. So I have a lot of those stockpiled. So yeah, weakness damage characters, I like Rydia there for damage dealers. On the E slot, you want to keep focusing on attack with Seymour because that's his primary role. So try to find E slots that give attack. So I have Kefka, which is magic attack up, and I've got his own. His own is attack, just generic attack. So attack and magic attack are what I have on there. Yuffie also does attack, and then Emperor also does attack. So those are the E slots I would be looking at here for Seymour. All right, so let's hop into our little showcase. I have been liking doing Irvine's intersecting wills, so we're going to continue to jump in on that here. So let's go ahead and pop in, and we'll just pick anybody. I don't care, and we'll begin. All right, so Seymour kind of has a unique mechanic where he gets stronger as the enemies get weaker. So the way you want to play Seymour these days, I'm not going to do it in the showcase because I'm showcasing Seymour, but typically what you want to do is early in the fight, you just want to dump Seymour out for your friend unit right away, if it's an event that allows a friend unit. Because what's going to happen is, let's just start with Desperado here. What happens is Seymour gets follow-up attacks based on the enemy's hit points. So if they're below 80%, that's like the first threshold. Like Seymour's kind of like a boss. Like he has thresholds that are on the enemy basically, but he reacts to those thresholds. So if the enemies are below 80%, that's the first threshold. I think he's pretty decent at that point. Before 80%, I would actually say he's like kind of below average. But then when you get the enemies below 50%, he's like a god. He's really good when they're below 50%. So that's what you really are gunning for here. So let's go ahead and do Aquamarine. Okay, and I want to try to hit the enemies with Seymour before they're at 80 so you can kind of see, like what, well, is Divine Judgment going to put him below 80? We'll just pop it. I don't think this will put him below 80 yet. We shall see, though. So I'm going to kind of explain the 15 and 35 here to start. And by the way, the LD buff is kind of what sets all this up. It gives them the total annihilation, which is what's going to trigger when they're below 50%. All right, so they're at 85. So this is going to be a base Seymour, okay? Okay, so this is going to be him kind of at his weakest, right? So Chain Spell is mainly a single target attack, and if the enemies are below 80%, it'll trigger twice. So that's when it gets decent. Lance of Atrophy is more of like an AoE attack, and what'll happen is if the enemies are below 80%, he will do the Lance of Atrophy, and then he will do a Chain Spell follow-up after, right? So like right here, if I just do Chain Spell, it's going to look pretty pathetic. We'll just use it. But he just does the Chain Spell, and that's it. And you can see the Desperado made it look nice, and the Eternal Darkness is going to make it look nice, but the actual attack itself was pretty bad, right? So when the enemies are like at high health, he's not looking good. But in some of these garbage fights, I mean, you can burn him down pretty quick. So now Seymour's going to get another attack, right? So let's do Chain Spell again so you can see the difference. So now below 80%, he's going to bust it off twice, okay? And then what happens is when the enemy gets below 50%, all of his attacks are going to trigger Total Annihilation after, which will add a third attack on top. So he's basically going to be triple attacking, which is why he is so impressive once you get him to that state. Which, in events where you can run a friend unit, right? That's totally like, if you're ever someone, because I feel like in garbage time especially, I don't even need the friend unit, right? So if you're someone that likes using friend units or wants to try them out, Seymour is a really good unit to do that with, because you can literally just start the fight, bring in the friend unit for Seymour, and then by the time the friend unit's out of there, the bosses are probably going to be below 50%, and then Seymour's going to come in and just be like a god. So the fact that he's so weak when the enemies are at full health isn't that much of a detriment, as long as you can bring in a friend unit to the fight, right? Let's Ragnarok Blade here. So that's the 15 to 35. I mean, I'll show the 35 again now, like at the 80%, because I do want you to get a good look at these for each of the thresholds, right? So I know we haven't done the LD or the EX yet, but we'll just kind of keep going here. Okay. So let's do, so we did Chain Spell. So you saw the first one was just the single attack. Then he did double because he's below 80. So here's Lance of Atrophy. So this is going to be like an AoE attack. Little splash there. And then he follows up with Chain Spell. So we got that because they're below 80%, right? And once again, we're going to get that Total Annihilation once they're below 55, or once they're below 50%, okay? All right, so yeah, we'll let that pop off, do all that fun stuff. Okay. So next turn, the next time we get them, we are going to pop off the LD. That is what we are going to do. So the LD gives him the Ready to Annihilate buff, which basically turns into Total Annihilation when the enemies are below 50%, right? All right, so we're going to do that. Sure, let's just do a grenade. It's fine. Let all these follow-ups trigger. I mean, between Laguna and Garnet, we're getting so many follow-ups and extra attacks. It's kind of crazy. All right, so now Seymour's already in God mode. It didn't take us long to get there in garbage time, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to pop off the LD because you haven't seen that yet. So let's go ahead and do that. So the LD here, what's really good about the LD is it is a Dispel. So it's going to dispel any buffs that enemies have, which is really good. And this puts the Total Annihilation buff on, which is really good. Okay, and then now we get, it also has a Chain Spell follow-up, and then here's Total Annihilation. So now all those attacks are going to end with Total Annihilation. And now it's like, okay, we're looking at like a mil AoE. Pretty good damage there, right? So if you know how to run Seymour and you're okay with the understanding, because I could see like a newer player that's like, okay, I just built Seymour, got his whole kit, like attack with him a couple times and be like, wow, he sucks. He's so underwhelming. If you don't understand that HP mechanic, then you don't really understand how he works. So once you understand that and you're like, yeah, just bring the friend unit in for those bad turns, and then you're basically just skipping that, right? And then Seymour can come in and just kind of clean house. Now, we haven't even looked at the EX yet, but it's basically just a big fat attack and then gives a free ability use on the next turn, and then just gives him a buff for 6 turns. And then he does have his AA, which is Set Sap, which does do a sap effect, which that can actually be good for orbs, right? So if you want to put a sap effect on the enemies, you can throw the AA down, which is pretty good for that as well. And it does more damage versus debuffed enemies. So Seymour really plays on debuffed enemies, and I mentioned this earlier, but he does weakness damage to debuffed enemies as well. So let's do Set Sap Burst. So that's just, and it does do an attack, and he gets the Total Annihilation on it. So that's really good. That the Total Annihilation is just going to follow everything up. It's kind of crazy. Okay, so you can take the free turns Total Annihilation. And let's go and do the EX. So this is Requiem here. Like I said, just big fat attack, free ability use on the next turn. So between the EX and all the follow-ups we're doing, look at all these follow-ups we're getting, you guys. This is crazy. Like, he's just finishing them off. Like, yeah, 1.5 mil. Yeah, just done. Like, we literally used all of his moves once, and enemies are just toast. So, there you go, guys. That's Seymour in a nutshell. Very good character. Once you get the enemies down, I think even below 80%, he's fine. But if the enemies have low health and you're burning them down that quick, like Seymour just rips through them, rips them to shreds. So if you like Seymour, good character, just bring in that friend unit to start and you're good to go. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all on the next one.